Dreams can blind you just as easily as love can. When I first met Ethan, I thought I'd found both. A partner who believed in me and a love story straight out of a movie. I was 24, full of ambition, and running a tiny handmade skincare brand from my kitchen called Glowcraft. It wasn't much then. Just a few jars of organic cream, some local orders, and a dream big enough to keep me awake at night. Ethan entered my life like a storm. Confident, charming, and endlessly persuasive. He showed interest in my work from the very beginning. "You've got something special, Lily," he said one night as I labeled jars at my kitchen table. "You just need the right push." He offered to help me grow the business. He had a background in finance and marketing, or so he claimed. He promised he'd help me take Glowcraft to the next level. Get investors, create a brand identity, and make it global. It sounded like everything I'd been praying for. At first it felt perfect. He built a simple website for me, found a few suppliers, and talked endlessly about strategy. He made me feel seen, capable, and supported. When he suggested taking a small business loan together to scale faster, I didn't think twice. He said it would make us equal partners, and I believed him. The loan was approved in my name, but he assured me he'd handle the payments and finances. I trusted him completely. He even moved into my apartment to make things easier for the business. Slowly, the boundaries blurred between our personal and professional lives. But soon I began noticing little cracks. Ethan became more controlling, over everything. He criticized how I made decisions, saying I was too emotional and not business-minded. He changed the online passwords for security reasons, stopped showing me financial statements, and started making deals without telling me. When I questioned him, he laughed in that sharp, condescending way. "Relax, Lily. You're too sensitive. Let me handle it. You just do what you're good at." One day, I discovered he'd transferred all business accounts to his name, claiming it was temporary. When I protested, he turned cold and distant. "You wouldn't even have a business if it weren't for me," he said, his voice cutting like ice. That sentence replayed in my mind for weeks. Every day I worked longer hours trying to keep Glowcraft alive. Ethan would show up late, give orders, and treat me like an employee. My dream, the one I had poured my soul into, was now his trophy. He flaunted it at parties, telling people he built it. I watched him steal my words, my formulas, my identity, all while living under my roof. And then came the debt. Ethan stopped paying the loan, claiming the business was in a slow season. I soon learned that the debt collectors were after me because everything was under my name. When I confronted him, he shrugged and said, "That's what you signed up for. Don't play the victim now." I remember standing there, speechless, realizing I was trapped, not by walls but by debt, manipulation, and misplaced love. The man who promised to build my dreams had quietly turned them into chains. That night I cried for the first time in months. Not because I'd lost money, but because I'd lost myself. Little did Ethan know, though, I was done crying. He might have built my cage, but one day I'd learn how to break it. For months I lived in quiet misery, trapped in a life that no longer felt like mine. Every morning I'd wake up before Ethan, drag myself to the workspace, and pour my heart into creating products while he strutted around like a self-made genius. He spent more time bragging to investors than actually helping. The business that had once been my dream was now a prison. He treated me like an assistant, barking orders, dismissing my ideas, and taking credit for everything I did. Whenever I tried to speak up, he'd twist my words. "You're ungrateful," he'd say. "You wouldn't last a week without me." It was manipulation, pure and practiced. The final straw came one night during a business dinner. Ethan introduced me to a woman named Harper, an influencer he'd been collaborating with. I noticed the way they looked at each other, the whispers, the small touches. Then right in front of me he said, "I built Glowcraft from the ground up. Lily helps with the creative side." Helps? I smiled through clenched teeth that night, but when we got home I exploded. "How dare you take credit for everything I built?" I shouted. He laughed. Not an embarrassed laugh, a cruel, taunting one. "Don't kid yourself, Lily. You had an idea. I made it real. You should be thanking me." That was the moment something in me shifted. The fear that had kept me obedient was replaced by something sharper, fury. I realized that waiting for him to give me freedom was pointless. I had to take it back myself. The next morning I began my silent war. I backed up every file on my computer, every recipe, every document that proved Glowcraft existed before Ethan came into my life. I took photos of receipts, emails, even handwritten notes. Every night after he fell asleep, I sat in the dim light of my laptop, gathering my evidence. Then I reached out to an old college friend, Mia, who now worked in business law. I told her everything. She was furious. "Lily, you have enough proof to take him down legally," she said. "You just have to be patient." And I was. For the first time in months, I felt control returning to me. Quietly, invisibly. Ethan still thought I was his frightened little puppet, but he didn't realize I was cutting my strings one by one. When I looked at him after that, I didn't see the man I once loved. I saw a thief who'd stolen my dream, and someone who was about to lose everything. Patience became my greatest weapon. For weeks, I played the role of the quiet, obedient partner, the one Ethan thought he had broken. He believed he'd won, that I was too scared to fight back. But beneath that calm surface, I was building my escape and his downfall. While Ethan flaunted Glowcraft on social media, I worked in silence. Using my savings and help from Mia, I began developing a new brand, Luma Organics. The name meant light. It represented the part of me he couldn't dim no matter how hard he tried. At night, while Ethan slept, I finalized product designs, contacted small suppliers, and secured legal trademarks in my name only. Every detail, every decision, mine alone. I swore I'd never let anyone take my work from me again. Meanwhile, Mia and her legal team were busy digging into Glowcraft's records. What they found shocked even me. Ethan had transferred funds, forged my digital signature on business papers, and redirected payments into his personal account. He wasn't just manipulative, he was a criminal. The day the evidence was ready, Mia looked me in the eye and said, "It's time." The lawsuit was filed quietly but precisely, charges of fraud, financial abuse, and defamation. When Ethan received the legal notice, I was in the kitchen making tea. I'll never forget the look on his face as he opened that envelope, the color draining from his skin. "What the hell is this?" he barked. I didn't flinch. "It's justice, Ethan. Something you've been avoiding for a long time." He threw the papers on the table, his voice rising. "You think you can destroy me? You wouldn't even have a business without me." I met his rage with a calm smile. "Funny. That's exactly what the court will decide." That night he left, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. But I didn't cry this time. I felt something far stronger than sadness. Freedom. The case moved fast. The evidence was undeniable. His forged signatures, his messages threatening to ruin me if I left, and proof that Glowcraft was mine before he ever showed up. Investors pulled out, the brand collapsed, and Ethan's reputation crumbled with it. When the judgment finally came, I stood in the courtroom, trembling but victorious. The court ruled in my favor. Glowcraft's assets were restored under my name, and Ethan was ordered to pay restitution for damages and fraud. As I walked out of that courtroom, the sunlight hit my face, and for the first time in years I could breathe freely. 1 year later, I was no longer the same woman who once cried herself to sleep beside Ethan's shadow. I was stronger, calmer, and finally free. Luma Organics had blossomed beyond my imagination. The brand I built in silence, born out of betrayal and pain, had become a beacon of hope for others. My small kitchen experiments had turned into a thriving business with loyal customers, glowing reviews, and a small team who truly believed in what we were creating. Every jar of cream, every product label carried more than ingredients. It carried my story. The story of survival, resilience, and rebirth. People often asked me how I found the courage to start over. I'd smile and say, sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find yourself. I didn't talk about Ethan anymore. I didn't have to. His name was now a ghost that couldn't haunt me. After the court case, his reputation crumbled. Former investors blacklisted him, and no company would hire him after the fraud scandal. I heard rumors that he'd tried starting new ventures under fake names, but each one failed. He had built his empire on lies, and lies never last. Then one afternoon, an unexpected email arrived in my inbox. The sender, Ethan Carter. For a moment my heart skipped, not from fear but from disbelief. I opened it slowly, expecting anger or blame. But the message was short, pitiful even. "Lily, I know you probably hate me, but I've lost everything. I don't have a job, a home, or anyone left to help me. You were always better at this than me. I just need a chance to start over. Please." I read it twice, almost laughing at the irony. The man who once told me I'd be nothing without him was now begging for my help. For a brief moment I thought of ignoring him. But then a quiet part of me, the part he tried so hard to silence, wanted closure. So I replied, "Ethan, you taught me one thing. Control doesn't last forever. You trapped me once but I broke free. You destroyed my dream and I rebuilt it from the ashes. I don't hate you. Thank you. Because without you I'd never have discovered how powerful I truly am." Lily. I hit send and sat back feeling lighter than ever. It wasn't anger that filled me, it was peace. My revenge had never been about hurting him. It was about proving that I could rise higher than he ever imagined. And I had. Months later, Luma Organics was featured in a major beauty magazine as one of the fastest-growing small brands of the year. When the interviewer asked me how it all began, I smiled softly and said, "It started with someone trying to take everything from me. But instead of losing, I learned." That night, I stood on my apartment balcony watching the city lights twinkle. The wind carried a sense of quiet victory, whispering through the air like freedom itself. Ethan had trapped me in debt to control me, but I had turned that trap into my ladder. He tried to steal my dream, but I rebuilt it bigger, brighter, and stronger than ever. And the sweetest revenge of all? Success, silent, unstoppable, and utterly mine. Ethan had tried to own my dream, but I had taken back my power.